Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of my new experiment. This is an advice show that, if you like this format, I would like to continue this, but this is the first episode, and what we're going to do is we're going to listen to some of your stories, and I'm going to use the tarot to reflect on your stories and hopefully help you. If you'd like to join the next round, whenever that's going to be, you can send me a voice message via my website. You can find the description. You can find the link in the description, rather. But I recommend that you wait for my post. I'm going to let you know what the topic of the next episode is going to be. And so, for the time being, we're going to talk about difficulty relating to others. So, we're going to get started with Dana's story.
Hi Amalia, I love your channel and you are welcome to use my story. I find it challenging to relate to people because I'm someone who does not engage with my biological family. I've had no contact with my family for many years, and that's mostly due to my own boundaries. And even though I've come really far in the grieving process and I've reached an acceptance of my situation, it can be very tricky this time of year during the holidays because I tend to be the only person I know who is not celebrating with loved ones or enjoying the comforts of home. And I do try to focus on gratitude, that I'm free and independent, but there is a feeling of emptiness and exclusion, especially when the people in my life are not available during the holidays. So I find it uncomfortable getting through this time of year, whether I'm alone or trying to do something alternative to holiday traditions. And talking to others about my lack of plans can also be awkward. I try to avoid feeling shame and jealousy or anger, but those emotions do rise to the surface sometimes. So thank you for any insight you can offer. I hope my story is helpful.
Okay, so this first story is probably one that many of you can relate to. And we're going to try and ask the tarot about the best way to relate during the holidays when you go no contact with your family. That can happen for a multitude of reasons, and it's a valid thing to do, but it doesn't mean that it's going to make life easy. So how can you relate? How can you fight against that feeling of emptiness? How can you relate to all those people who are now happily celebrating with their families? Or at least that's what it looks like from the outside. We don't know what in actuality is going on in people's homes. I'm assuming there's a lot of difficulty, a lot of problems playing out in those scenarios as well, but let's circle back to your question. All right. So, this is a beautiful card. The Ten of Cups. And it's the card of chosen family. So you've made a brief remark about other people being occupied, being with their own families. And that is probably true, that they don't have the full capacity to be by your side. But each of them can give you a little cup of joy, a little bit of support. But what it really takes for this to happen is for you to be brave enough to ask for support during these difficult times and be able to tell your friends, hey, I need a little nudge, just a little, a tiny little token of your support in some way, even if that's just a phone call or a message, or they could send you a piece of music that they're listening to, a movie that they want you to see, whatever they can come up with to support you, whatever little capacity they have to give you that emotional support. And the emphasis here is on multiple people, so you can rely on many other people to charge you with some positive reinforcement, some positive energy. So you don't have to consider this, because I'm assuming that a lot of the emptiness and a lot of the loneliness comes down to a feeling of being a burden to just one friend, or being a burden to someone or some people who are busy doing other things. But the key here is to recognize that you are part of an ecosystem. There are many, many people around you, some of whom are maybe not even close friends, just acquaintances, but you can soak up some support and love from them as well, in tiny little ways. And when each individual gives you just a little bit, eventually it's going to add up and create this net of support. That is what I think chosen family is all about. So, if you're feeling like you should not be asking for anything during these times, if you should not be bothering your friends, your acquaintances at all, that's coming from a place of low self-esteem. It's coming from some sort of traumatic self-image. And it doesn't have to be that way. Obviously, there's practical considerations. So, as an adult, you understand that you cannot expect the same level of support from these people, from these friends, as you normally would. But you can certainly expect a little package of love from each of them, and they are going to be willing to give it to you, as long as you ask for it. And this is where I think the real solution is being vulnerable enough and upfront and honest enough to tell your friends, normally the holidays are a difficult time for me, and I think I might need some encouragement during this time. So letting them know is probably enough for you to receive some ammunition, some nourishing energies, emotionally nourishing energies from them. And that's something that you can also reflect back at them as you normally would. So, I think this is, it sort of seems like a crowdfunding idea, crowdfunding your emotions. This is a very modern concept, but that's an economical concept, but I think it works in emotions as well. You don't have to have that one significant person to give you everything that you need to fulfill all of your desires, all of your emotional needs. You can rely on this network and each little node to bring you what they uniquely can, just a snippet of their love. Perhaps a smile, perhaps 2 lines of a poem that they've just read. Could be anything, and you will notice that the smallest things are going to add up, and they will create this network of love, support, and safety that will help you and carry you. Let's move on to our next story.
Hi, I've been a follower of yours for a little while. I just kind of wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and how it's a little difficult for me relating to others. All of this kind of started last year. I am a bisexual woman, and I came out last year when I got a girlfriend, and which was very scary for me, and it's still kind of scary to this day because I live in a very conservative environment and my family is mainly Christian, and it's kind of scary because I don't really identify as Christian, and I still live with them and they're like my primary support people, but it's been a little difficult for me because last year, it has now officially been a year since I have attempted suicide, and I'm doing a lot better because I've finally been to college and my life is kind of getting, like, I've met good friends and my life is getting so much better, but it is definitely hard because I go to a majority Christian school and I can't really tell anybody who I am, but I really appreciate your videos and they give me a lot of comfort, and thank you so much for just being yourself. It really inspires me to be myself. So, thank you.
So, let's see what I can tell you. This is a very difficult situation, and also a situation that I'm sure many of my viewers can relate to. So let's see what the cards have to say about that. Alright, we have the card of the Emperor showing up for you. And the Emperor, I think, in this context, could represent the extremely rigid and cold and traditional structure that you're forced to operate in. Your values, your being, your inclinations, They simply don't match what the Emperor is trying to convey, the kind of rules and frameworks that it's trying to force onto you. But what I love about this deck, and what I love about this card in particular, is that there's an alternative explanation and an alternative perspective on this. So while traditionally the Emperor in the tarot is regarded as a sort of a lead character, someone who wants to dominate and control, there's also a connection with order, creating order out of chaos. And what we're seeing here is an example of nature's order. So, what these conventional and narrow-minded schools of thought are trying to portray to you, or what they are trying to convince you of, is that somehow what they are doing is natural and you are not natural. But what can strengthen you and what can really give you your dignity back is the understanding that you are part of the order of nature, the order of God, if you will, this divine order that's created you to be the way you are, and that's the most natural thing to do, to just be yourself. And all those ridiculous measures that these people are taking to avoid the truth of that, that's rather unnatural. And, well, perhaps that's not the right way to go about that. Perhaps that also could be seen as a phenomenon of nature, just a manifestation of this underlying logic, this natural order of things, that some people are going to end up living by those values and creating those sorts of religious structures that are extremely judgmental and hard to navigate for someone who wants to live authentically. But that's also a naturally arising phenomenon. But that doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it the only potential true pathway forward. And you already know this, of course. You know it and you're standing by your truth, but it's important that you deeply understand that what you represent in this world is not some deviation from the divine order, not some fluke in a system of normalcy. It is divine order itself, expressing itself in its many different ways. And so, respecting this, respecting your own nature, your own desires, your own mind, and heart and soul is the only way forward. And this does not have to create a rift necessarily between you and people in your family who are perhaps having a hard time processing this. It could, but it doesn't necessarily have to. You can relate to them by understanding that they are the way they are. And that's also, no matter how painful, it's also an expression of this sacred logic. I've recently been watching a video with Alan Watts. If you don't know him, I recommend that you look him up. He's a teacher, a lecturer, a philosopher, and he often talks about concepts like the Tao and Zen Buddhism in his lectures. And so his point was, I can only be what I am. There's no point in trying to be another way, because me trying to be another way is also me. There's no escaping this. There's no escaping this divine order. And no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you will always just be what you are. And that's okay. And when you can relax into this, when you can truly, on a cellular level, when you can accept this, that's where freedom begins. And that's when you're going to be able to relate even to those people who are very far from your beliefs, your convictions, your nature even. So imagine it like this. You might be this leaf down here, one of these leaves, and some other person that you're having a hard time relating to could be this leaf up here. But you're all part of the same tree, the same logic, the same rules are creating you, and the same root and the same trunk, the same entity. And the separation is just an illusion. The hierarchy is just an illusion. It's really difficult to see sometimes, but when you can see it, it can really bring you some peace. Now, let's listen to the final story.
Currently, I'm facing great issues relating to most people in my life, but more specifically to my co-workers. I feel a huge disconnect between me and them, stemming from the fact that I'm so maladapted to the corporate life, that I see their hustle and bustle, the constant chase for more money and higher positions, and dog-eat-dog mentality to be devoid of humanity. It's almost as if they live in a separate world from my own, like I have absolutely nothing in common to talk about with them, and that brings me a lot of pain. I feel like they treat me like I'm inferior simply because I'm not eager to do work outside my schedule for the greater good of the company. I wish I could leave this competitive and, in my opinion, toxic environment behind and start anew, but at the moment I'm trapped.
So I have no idea what this random doodle is supposed to be. I don't know what it means. Do you guys perhaps have any ideas? Something from my subconscious, I guess. So, your story is also one that I think lots of people can relate to, and I'm a big proponent of standing up against these corporations that only seek to drain the creative and unique energies of individuals. They are seeking to break you into a pattern, and I really don't like these corporations. I myself have had a couple of those jobs, but I know what you're talking about. It's really difficult to keep yourself protected in those environments. So we're going to have a look at what the cards have to say to you regarding that. And we have the Tower. So really, what I think your anxiety and your lack of ability to relate is about is, I think that's interesting that the candle has just burned out. We're going to try to resurrect it. Well, that might not be possible. I'll be back in a second. So as I was saying, your lack of ability to relate to a completely unrelatable environment with fake happiness, fake values, and soul-crushing injustice all around you. Well, basically your lack of ability to relate is the most natural thing. It's simply a consequence of you being human, you not accepting to be controlled in that way. Getting your work done and doing what you're supposed to do on a professional level is one thing, but what I'm getting from your message is that they are coming for your soul. They want you to be perfectly aligned emotionally with the quote-unquote purpose or mission of the company, and you're forced to try and communicate with people who have these misguided perceptions and ideas of you, of themselves, of the situation that they're in. It's an impossible situation, and reacting to this situation with turmoil, intensity, and by being upset is actually the right thing to do. It's the only thing to do. It shows that you are not on autopilot. You're not asleep. And you have different ideas on what it means to be human. But there's inevitably going to come a point where the environment that you're in is going to no longer be habitable. If you've seen the previous story, we've had the emperor. So we had this same tree, and now we have the tower, the tree being struck by lightning, and the whole structure coming down. It's order that's been created and is being demolished. It's been created by nature, and now it's being taken away by that same force. It's being destroyed. And so, what this card is saying is that you're under no obligation to try and align yourself spiritually to a group of people and to a situation where your soul is being suffocated. Of course, for a while, for practical reasons, you will need to stand your ground and try to fit in superficially, but you don't have to. Give your soul, give your energy to them. And what this card is telling me is that inevitably a crash is coming, an ultimate collision between you and the environment that does not accommodate you, that you're not aligned with. And that's simply the logic of existence, is that things that don't belong together will not stay together. And it's not meant to be for you to exist in these sorts of environments for lengthy periods of time. And it's also not your job to try and relate to the unrelatable. So just keep that in mind. And I would recommend that you start devising an exit plan for when the lightning is going to strike, because it's inevitably going to strike. And you're going to be catapulted out of this trap. But this can be a painful and sudden and radical process. So it might not be a joyride, but ultimately what this card is saying to me is that any efforts to try and align with an environment that you're going to be pushed out of anyway, it's a waste of energy, it's a waste of time. And you could use that time, that energy, in much more useful and productive ways for your own gain, for your own spiritual nourishment. So I hope that you enjoyed these readings. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and if you would like another episode. And I hope to see you in another reading.